Good day. My name is Bill Behrens, and I would like to give you some reasons why you might want to consider studying Christian worldview at the RTC. Studying Christian worldview is beneficial because a serious Christian commitment affects your family life, your social life, the way you do church, your work, and even recreation. In fact, it's fair to say that Christian worldview affects the whole of your life. Studying Christian worldview is also invaluable as a preparation for Christian outreach. Whether you want to work in foreign missions, or whether you want to do evangelism or some kind of care work in society, if you're not familiar with the worldview of the people, what you're doing can be seriously misunderstood. And it's very important that you know the way that people think if you want to reach them. And then Christian worldview can help you in your studies. That's true for general studies like arts, sciences, engineering, law, whatever. Unless you know the presuppositions where the practitioners of these disciplines begin, you could be led seriously astray. The various disciplines often come with presupposition that are not in agreement with what the Bible teaches us. That's not to say that you can't practice these disciplines as a Christian, but it's so important that as Christians we begin from the proper biblical presuppositions rather than those suggested by our Western worldview. Now, what's true for studies in general is also true for biblical studies, and we will look at that in the next slide. If you want to do biblical or theological studies, again, it's very important that you're familiar with the Christian worldview and with the worldviews that are represented in the Bible. For example, in Old and New Testament studies, you will come across the worldviews of the Hebrews, the Jewish people, and the Hellenistic people. The Hebrews, from the time of Abram onwards, had a particular way of looking at things that, may not always resonate with Western people. And if you don't understand them, it's very easy to come to a faulty understanding of the Old Testament. The same is true for the New Testament, which for a large part takes place in the Jewish world. That's particularly true for what you read in the Gospels. For example, when Jesus deals with the rich young ruler, unless you realize that this rich young ruler is a saint in Jewish eyes, what Jesus says may not make much sense. You also have to know the Hellenistic worldview, and that's especially so when you read the book of Acts, which to a large extent takes place in the world outside of Israel. And in interpreting the epistles, which are mostly written to people of a Hellenistic, that is a Greek worldview, you will come across issues like their opposition to the idea of resurrection that you won't understand unless you know the Hellenistic worldview. Then there is the area of theology. There used to be a time when, before you studied theology, you would study the so-called prolegomena. Sometimes today this is known as the introduction to theology. And basically, this concerns itself with the starting point of theological studies. Why did it begin with the Bible? What is the Bible? And how are you going to use it in doing theology? These are all questions which relate to the Christian worldview. In studying church history, we come across similar kind of things. For example, you will find that some theologians look at issues in a different light from the way we would look at them today. And therefore, if you want to study about people like Augustine or Aquinas, it's important that you know the kind of worldview that was prevalent at the time that they taught. I've already spoken of the need for Christian worldview in doing missions and evangelism. If you are still not sure about what is involved, you could do well to read a book like The Peace Child by Don Richardson. Here he explains how he was unable to present the gospel until he learned the worldview of the people concerned, especially the role of the peace child. Lastly, there's the area of apologetics. And here again, it's so important in defending the faith over against other religions or other ways of looking at things, that we understand the worldview of the people concerned. For example, it may make sense to argue about the existence of God when you talk to an atheist, but it would make little sense to argue about the existence of God when you're dealing with Muslim people. The worldview of the first excludes the idea of God, whereas the worldview of the second is quite accepting of it. In fact, there is a lot of overlap between apologetics and Christian worldview studies, although there are some different emphases. For example, apologetics is specifically concerned with defending the Christian gospel and convincing people of the truth of the Christian gospel, whereas worldview studies are more concerned with knowing what people are thinking and how the Bible encourages us to think. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and are now fully convinced of the value of taking a course in Christian worldview studies. I do want to point out that you don't have to come to Geelong to study this course. You can do it online from behind your computer. And you can do that by way of 26 lessons, which are given in the format, the PowerPoint format, which I've used to introduce the course to you here. Besides this, there are also written lessons to back up the PowerPoint program, and there are opportunity for further exercises and for interacting with other students on the forums. I want to point out that this particular unit is fully accredited and can therefore be taken towards any course that allows for an elective, whether a university or a Bible college course. The unit is given at both the graduate and the undergraduate level. But if you don't feel like doing it for credit, you can also audit the subject, so to say, which means you can do all the lessons and exercises without sitting the exam and worrying about credit. Now, if you want any further information about where to go from here, please consult the next slide. Thank you.